On this episode of Made in America, I'm with Angelo from CCAT, and we're talking about all kinds of great manufacturing stuff, including incumbent worker training and why it's so critical for technology to lead the way. Stay here to find out what he makes and why he makes it. Hi, I'm Ari Santiago, President, CEO of IT Direct, and welcome to another episode of Made in America. I'm here with Angelo, President and CEO of CCAT. And I met through Senator Murphy's Manufacturing Advisory Council. We've done some stuff on CCAT together. Ron's a really long-time Connecticut resident, born and raised his own family here, and has been in the Connecticut business environment, both in the private sector and on the government side for a long time. Really excited to have him on and hear his thoughts on manufacturing in Connecticut and what CCAT's doing to help build the ecosystem. Ron, thanks so much for coming on today.
Ari, it's great to be here. Excited. It has been great working with you, and I can't wait to hear what you have to ask me.
There we go. So listen, a Made in America podcast, we start off with the same two questions. Yeah. What do you make and why do you make it?
Well, it's an interesting question about what we make. CCAT, Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, we're in our 15th year, but we're a development company. So what we do is advance technologies through development, validation, adoption of the technologies into the manufacturing supply chain, and also advanced training. So our customer is the supply chain, the small, medium-sized businesses. We work with government entities, we work with large global industrial companies, but the small companies that make up our supply chain, the 4,000 plus companies in Connecticut, are really our customers. So we do the development work, provide solutions for them that they can use on their shop floor to do things better, drive down costs, bring up efficiencies, and just make better products.
Well, that's all really, really great stuff. And at some point, we'll really shortly want to get into kind of the details on that. But I'm always fascinated by the why. And I think, in a lot of contexts, we've talked to business owners and founders or leaders who maybe have a why they started the business. Obviously, you didn't start CCAT.
Right.
But maybe I can ask you the double why, which is, why does CCAT exist and what's kind of the impetus behind that? And then after that, why did you get involved in CCAT and kind of what's the why that drives Angelo to be successful?
Sure. So 15 years ago when we first started, a group of centers were established, again, for the supply chain to continue to increase the competitiveness of the supply chain to keep jobs here. When CCAT was first established, jobs were going offshore. Mm-hmm. That was the big push. The government put funding out throughout the country to put these centers in place to help the supply chain remain competitive, bring the jobs here, keep the jobs here. So that's kind of the original why.
And you said how many centers were original?
There were 3. Now there's centers all over the country with different capabilities that we link to.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
so CCAT, the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, was one of the original 3?
We were one of the original 3, one in Ohio and one in Pennsylvania. So we're actually a regional. We're called the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, but we have a regional designation.
Okay.
So we do things beyond Connecticut. We do things domestically and internationally.
Okay. Wow. So CCAT's initial mission was really to help the supply chain in the United States, and CCAT kind of being in the Northeast sector,
right,
to really regain its competitive advantage or its just competitiveness in the global market, kind of in the face of NAFTA, in the face of Asia,
right,
that whole kind of
Asia, the labor arbitrages that were going on around the world, and we were trying to make sure that we kept a competitive edge. Originally, we were drilling holes with lasers into fan blades. Now, none of that exists anymore, which we'll get to in the second part of the why and what we're doing now. But that was now what we did back then is now flying in the air. And the work we did back then is now part of the most sensitive military platforms that are around the globe that are protecting us now. So they have long life cycles to them. But what we do today and the why behind that, which we'll get to, is very different. But we have to continue to transform ourselves, especially in this
At the core, is CCAT still all about helping manufacturers in the United States and in Connecticut and the Northeast be competitive globally in terms of quality of output and what we're able to do to maintain kind of our ability to manufacture and the jobs related to that? Is
Absolutely.
that still the core of what CCAT's
That's the core mission. Absolutely, is to service the supply chain, and we do that we get takedowns from the government, then you get takedowns from the large global industrial companies. You take their lead about where they're going, where they're going to be in the next 5 years, where they're going to be in the next 10 years. CCAT has to be very uniquely focused on those leading edge technologies and make sure that the supply chain is looking at them, understanding them, adopting them. So when the new parts come out, when the new engine designs and things come out, these supply chain companies are ready to provide the products and services to them, or that work will migrate elsewhere.
Right.
And we've seen that around the country.
What's takedown?
We're just taking the lead from them. So
Okay,
the technologies that they're advancing, a lot of stuff, as you can imagine, comes from government. So Oak Ridge Lab in Tennessee is probably one of the top labs for the Air Force. There's certain entities around the U.S. that are the driving force behind the fundamental type of research that's done. UConn does some tremendous fundamental research. CCAT is applied research. So we're taking what's done fundamentally and we're determining, okay, now how do you best use this?
Fundamental meaning not to poo-poo it, but sort of pie in the sky, like just creating some conceptual idea of what could be, how it could work from a technology standpoint. And CCAT is like the application end of it, saying, here's this great concept. Let's see how we can actually put that to actual use or something?
Exactly. So if you take like materials, that's the easiest thing to do. So they'll be looking at materials, hybrid materials. Once they have one, now how do you use it? How do you machine it? What tools, what technologies do you use? And then what's the best platform for that new alloy that a fundamental researcher might have come up with? So it's like, how do you use it? And it's kind of a basic technology transfer platform. Mid-stage TRLs, technology readiness levels, push it out to the late stage and the early stage manufacturing readiness levels. Okay. That's the end game.
And CCAT's the rubber meeting the road of getting that technology to be useful in a manufactured way, be able to process it, mill it, machine it, shape it, whatever needs to be done to take it and apply it in real worlds.
Right. We provide that end solution that can now go into the supply chain and say, here's how you do it. This is the machine you need. This is the process you need. This is the material you're going to use. Go to it. Now you can be a great, high quality supplier to the tier ones and government platforms.
Cool. So before we kind of get back and dig into what CCAT does and how they do it and how companies can engage with CCAT, because I think, we'll talk a little bit about our conversations on that, which I think have been really fascinating. I'm also really fascinated by the individual why, right? I think whether it's in the private sector or otherwise, if we're going to be successful, the why or individual why is super important. So what is your why, Ron? What kind of pushes you forward?
Well, the why for CCAT is when you look at the development work, it's the most expensive work that needs to be done. There's a lot of lead time to it. Most companies, when you look at the 4,000 companies, we have roughly 170,000 manufacturing jobs in the state of Connecticut. Yep. We have 4,000 manufacturing companies. If you take the big ones out of the equation, like the Pratt & Whitneys and the Electric Boats and Sikorsky, and take that workforce out of it, the average company has about 30 employees or under 30 employees in the state of Connecticut. These are small businesses. They need to produce product. They need to get paid for their service. So to take a top-notch employee and some of their equipment, say, hey, let's take this offline and do development work, is very, very costly, and very few can do them. So how does CCAT then take that lead and say, we'll expend the resources and the time and the expertise to do the development work, so then we can supply you with the solution. So the why is that this work is being done elsewhere. So to keep our competitive edge in Connecticut, CCAT is a vital, vital center, just like the other centers that exist around the country. So if we're not providing that lead time development work, the companies, for the most part, aren't going to be able to handle that themselves. They're too busy just operating their companies day in, day
growing,
out.
Billing, trying to stay alive.
That's right.
So you're kind of helping be the R&D arm a little bit?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right.
So we'll circle back. Talk about yourself personally, Ron. Like, why'd you go to CCAT? What's inspiring you to kind of get up and be the CEO and drive the CCAT mission forward personally?
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved with the small business community here in Connecticut for decades. So small businesses I have a kind of an affinity to them. My time spent at the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, there was a lot to do with manufacturing there. So I've got much more versed in that industry, in the industrial technologies, probably about 20 years ago now. So CCAT, as its inception, again, I was involved, but on the outside kind of looking in. I was a funder and supporter through the state of Connecticut to CCAT.
So your role at DECD, when you were like deputy commissioner there, you were really involved in helping CCAT generate funding?
Well, I was a part of helping CCAT with their mission, as I was a part of helping a lot of entities be a provider to the supply chain in the industrial base. So I was a big supporter of CCAT, amongst other entities. But I had a good familiarity. And over time, you see where CCAT has gone and the tremendous accomplishments that have been made, but you start seeing, where industry is going. And because I was in the private sector at the time, I was involved in all sorts of conversations around new technologies and early stage companies. And I'm like, wow, this is where this industry is going. We're not focused on that. Whether it's workforce development or whether it's technology adoption, CCAT really has to be part of that catalyst. We have to be in the fray. So how do we look against CCAT as the first 15 years and say, okay, now what are we going to do for the next 10? And just as we're moving into the fourth industrial revolution and we're looking at Industry 4.0, we got to be looking at, CCAT 2 and 3 and 4.0 now. And we have to continue to kind of reinvent ourselves and be nimble enough and entrepreneurial enough to understand that even the technologies we're looking at today, 5 years from now, might change. I mean, that's how rapid when you look at something like additive manufacturing. This is something that is revolutionary in some ways because there's big changes done, but it's also evolutionary. That's the big part. It's gonna, a continuous improvement process is always going to be in place now, and a continuous adoption of new technologies. It's never going to be enough. We're never going to be where we want to be because the bar is always going to keep moving. We just have to keep up.
That's the nature of advancement, the human condition, technology. I think we can look back, right? We've come a long way since we invented fire and the wheel, right? Or maybe not invented fire, but
that's what's fun. I mean, that's what's really fun about it for me is you're always looking ahead. Just when you've found some really great solutions and you made a difference to the supply chain, you're on to that next thing. So there's always this energy. There's always this excitement about looking forward.
So let's get, I think you talked before about CCAT kind of being the application of technology, kind of the rubber, or in my words, were the rubber meeting the road. So talk a little bit, because I think there's a lot of people that don't know about CCAT. So can you talk a little bit about, I know you guys are in East Hartford, so talk about kind of what you guys have in East Hartford and what the small, medium-sized businesses could take advantage of there.
Well, this is a great question. I sometimes lead off with something that several businesses, when they come in, they say, wow, this is the best kept secret in Connecticut. And as a business owner, that is the worst thing you could possibly hear. You don't want to be the best kept secret of anything.
Yes, I think I actually said that when I went to see the facility myself. So,
Well, a lot of CEOs from big companies have it, and you scratch your head saying, boy, I got to get rid of that. I don't want anyone to say that again. But we have 3 facilities. 2 are up and running right now. We're located at Pitkin Street in East Hartford, and that's really our administrative office building. We run a lot of programs, educational training programs, and that is also where we house 22 companies right now. And we always have companies kind of coming in and out. We do a lot of conference space there and convening of meetings. The small business development centers there and several colleges and universities.
So is it like incubator-ish?
I don't want to say incubator because these are companies that kind of already have some momentum going. They've got some IP around them, so they're kind of looking for that business development support. They're looking for the right environment to be able to grow, but they're smaller, certainly smaller companies. On Silver Lane in East Hartford, we have our Advanced Manufacturing Center, which is where all the kind of the cool toys are. And we have some pieces of equipment in there that there may be only a few in the entire country. Some that are the only ones on the East Coast, and some of them the only ones that are not in production. These pieces of equipment are so expensive and so unique that if they're not in production, they're unaffordable to have around because they're very expensive to run. And we have our main focus there at the manufacturing center. But a third facility is opening up just down the road. It'll be open next month, and that's an advanced composite center. And this will be a fully automated composite center that will be as good as any in the country. So the capabilities and competencies that CCAT has now is something that the manufacturing community needs to know, and manufacturing community broadly. So we're not just aerospace by any means.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. That's another, I would say the best kept secret. And then if it's not a secret, it's we only deal with aerospace. Is probably another thing.
I'll save that one for later. But we're focusing right now on additive technology. So the additive is a large umbrella technology, but we're going to end up with 6 technologies in additive manufacturing. We have the composite center that we're doing. We have non-contact inspection. And we have hybrid
all of this
machining.
at the new facility.
All of this in the new facility. And even the last time you were there and toured it, you're going to come in, you'd be like, wow, what just happened? Because there's very little space left on the floor. So we need to actually expand our footprint.
The one on Silver Lane.
The one on Silver Lane.
Wow. It was pretty full when I saw it.
Well, it's even more full now. And we're going to be moving more equipment in the first quarter. So again, it's just a part of that listening to industry, seeing where they're going and making sure that we have the technologies in place to advance their mission and then get it down to the supply chain.
So let me ask like a very sort of specific question. So let's say that I am one of those smaller, manufacturers, 30, 40 employee manufacturers. I'm doing some medical device manufacturing, let's say. How does CCAT help me? How do I use the technology, the training, whatever that CCAT has to make my business better?
Well, we do everything from we can go into a business, and we work actually in conjunction with partners, remember. So our partners like Constep, the University of Connecticut, the University of Hartford, Goodwin College, the community college system, very, very, very important to our mission. So it's important that we're all aligned, and we have a lot of work to do in regarding the alignment and the type of collaborations that we have. But we can go into a company and assist them with, let's say they have a piece of equipment. Are they optimizing that piece of equipment? Are they using it the right way? Can we build more efficiencies? Can we sensor that piece of equipment to now begin to collect data? Again, start implementing smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0 technologies into their existing platform. So we can do things like that. We can help with incumbent worker training. So if they've got a group of experienced people on their shop floor, but they don't know about additive yet, how do we now introduce them to these new technologies? We do programs with Siemens NX so they can become more proficient in their programming, things like that. But the real kind of gem is, let's say they're doing a part that they've been running for years, maybe with a global industrial company. That company now comes to them and says, we need this part. We want you to design and make this part additively now with a hybrid alloy, totally different than what you've been doing. That's where CCAT comes in, and we've already gotten calls like that. How do we do this? What's the best technology? What materials are we going to use? What do? We have to educate them now start to finish, and we're just at the very genesis of this now, which is really interesting. And if Connecticut, and I'm not saying if because Connecticut is, we're going to hit the mark. We need to be right in that sweet spot to be able to deliver these capabilities to our supply chain. And if we don't, then we're going to see what's happened in the past few decades around Huntsville, Alabama, and in other parts of the country that have grown tremendously. Well, they've grown it because they've attracted the technologies. So once you attract the technology, that's where the jobs migrate. So we're trying to make sure we build this continuum in place, leading with technology, following with training, incumbent worker training, and following even down the road with actually STEM awareness and education.
So what are some of the project successes you could point to? You don't have to use company names if you want, but I always find it super interesting to hear like a case study, if you will. Is there anything that kind of pops off?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because we're blanketed on everything we do has an NDA associated with it. But I
think
the name. Yeah, generally speaking, it's so we've done some incredible work for NASA. Okay. So we're actually doing work for NASA that's going to be going on the next generation of rockets that are going to maybe take us to the moon someday. Really, really exciting stuff. As I said, we've actually formed solutions and done work that is now on some of our most sensitive and powerful military platforms. But really, it's kind of probably around the supply chain. I think from an altruistic standpoint, being able to find a workforce that's been disconnected, a population that's been disconnected from the workforce, getting them involved, training them up, and being able to place them into a manufacturer, man, that's a real cool success because not only have you aided a manufacturer with a valuable employee, but you've changed somebody's life and you start changing a community. Yep. You've actually given somebody the opportunity to earn a living wage and a really valuable career. And this might have been a population that's underserved, underrecognized, and really hasn't been open or available or have these opportunities available to them. So those are things that mean a lot to me. But at the end, remember, CCAT's a business. So we have to actually be driving real-time value from a technology standpoint to the supply chain.
And so in terms of driving that value to the supply chain, I come to you with a problem or a challenge. Maybe it's not even my customer wants me to learn how to make it better. What if I just want to make it better? So how would I engage you? Do I call Ron?
You call. Well, you absolutely, you can call me. You can navigate a bit of our website, which by the way needs to be modernized. Right. But we've got pretty good information out there. We've got a chief technology officer who's a marvelous, skilled individual, Tom Maloney. We've got a great group of people. They're very well known. So we go out to all the manufacturing associations. We do speaking engagements. We bring in several times a month, kind of a lunch and learn type thing. So we're doing a lot of outreach to the community. But if a company has a problem, all they have to do is call us. They can email us or call us. We would invite them in. They work with our engineers. What's the challenge, first of all? And what are we trying to solve? What are we trying to solve for? And then you work out the solution. Sometimes it's as simple as a company might have a broken tool. If you know much about manufacturing, tooling is magnificently expensive. Oh, yeah. Tens of thousands, if not sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars for a tool. Tools break. They wear and they break. Well, we've developed methods where we can actually fix tooling. We can repair tooling. That alone saves companies tens of thousands of dollars. If they just knew that, there's probably not one manufacturing company in Connecticut that doesn't have a broken tool sitting on their floor. So something as simple as that, and sometimes that's a very good introduction into additive
Some of the
manufacturing.
other stuff that you guys got going
Right.
on,
So let's just do something simple that doesn't actually involve production. Let's do something around prototyping. Let's do something around development. So, but sometimes it's good for groups of them to come in so we can actually show them more en masse. But there's probably not one. There's probably not one company in Connecticut that we couldn't go into and find something that we could help solve.
them solve.
Yeah, it's,
And so
that's
what?
what
So do
we
they pay you? Like, how does that work? Like,
Well,
so CCAT government funded? Like, how does the whole thing work?
Well, and I'm glad you being a businessman, you use the term funding. Entities, CCAT has an umbrella, has a 501c3 over us. So funding is important to us, meaning we run programmatic. We run programs for the state and federal government. Those have funding to do with them, meaning money comes in to pay for those programs, but it's very specific, very prescriptive in what we do.
For example, like what is that?
So it could be a workforce development program. But I should get to your point specifically. What do companies do? CCAT has to, like any business, has to create revenues. We have to have a revenue source. So yes, we do when we do commercial work or work with the private sector, we charge for that. Now it could be time and materials, it could be a fixed cost, whatever it may be. And that's something that's an iterative process. So it's not like we've got really hard and fast type of things. We have to understand what we're trying to solve for. So we have the programmatic funding that comes in, and then we have the funding or the revenues that we can generate from companies. But a company may come in with a problem that we can actually help fund. We can help them fund them through an SBIR. We can help
SBIR,
Small Business Innovation and Research, and so we have some of these federal programs.
Sure.
But we also run the Manufacturing Voucher Program for the state of Connecticut. That's a marvelously successful program that was put out by the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, the MIF, and their board, a very experienced group of individuals, and the Department of Economic and Community Development. So they provide the funding to us. But that allows a company up to a $50,000 matching grant where they can go out and invest in new technologies and things that can help solve challenges for them. So we actually have funding in-house that we can provide and help provide and do kind of a cost share for companies. And sometimes companies will come in and just say, hey, can you give me an idea what's going on here? We answer questions. We don't want to ever turn anybody away. You want to be able to help them. And if it takes a couple minutes or it takes an hour, we'll do it. If it involves a real in-depth project, then we're going to have to figure out how to get paid for it.
Well, hey, listen, we're all in business. We get how that works.
That's right.
So in the manufacturing center that you guys have on Silver Lane, like there's a ton of equipment in there. What are you guys doing in there? Those are part of the projects that you guys are contracted for. And so you're trying to figure out how to use that equipment to develop a process that then you kind of go back to your client and say, hey, we figured out how to make X. You got to follow these steps, blah, 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 with this machine. Like, what are they doing in that?
Well, and if you've noticed, there's 5-axis machines, there's milling machines, there's hybrids. So we've got some very unique equipment where you're doing additive manufacturing and machining in the same build fold. What goes on in those machines, though, differs greatly. Sometimes we're doing a government project that will specifically go back to the Air Force or Department of Defense, or Department of Energy, or NASA. Other times we're running a project for one of our global OEMs or the supply chain. So, but yes, it is. It
runs the gamut in there.
It's about maybe we're testing a new material or a new hybrid. Maybe it's a powder form. Maybe it's an alloy. Maybe it's a ceramic composite material. It could be anything on any given day that you walk into, but it involves providing a solution and the massive collection of data that goes along with that solution then gets passed on to the customer. And that customer could be very broad. Could be medical device customer, could be automotive, could be.
So that's actually exactly where I wanted to go. So CCAT has the reputation, I think, in Connecticut of being, maybe not an arm of Pratt & Whitney, but certainly highly linked, and certainly very, very, very aerospace focused. And as you and I have talked about, and you well know, while aerospace is a much beloved and very important industry, in Connecticut, it's not the only thing in Connecticut, and neither is just defense. There's a lot going on. Medical device you talked about, plastics, all different types of things for all different types of reasons. Talk a little bit about CCAT's maybe they want to talk directly about the perception of CCAT
Yep.
and aerospace. And I know that's a myth or perception you'd like to change. So let's start that process right now, Ron.
Yeah, we've got a lot of marketing outreach to do on that still. That'll be a 2020 project. But
hey, November 2019, we're getting you going on the best podcast in the whole state.
There we go. So we are not, we are a private entity, absolutely a private entity. We are not a government entity. We are not a Pratt & Whitney, but entities like Pratt & Whitney and Sikorsky and Electric Boat are massively important to Connecticut's industrial base. Not only them as individual companies, but of course the supply chain that they support. So they are, of course, then very, very important to CCAT. So their mission, their development mission is very, very important. So it is not just aerospace. It is when you look at what's going on in the state in shipbuilding alone, when you're talking about one sub a year or one sub every other year, which it was not too long ago, and now going to 3 subs, you're talking about $9 billion in hardware that is going to be launched from the state of Connecticut in the coming years. To meet that demand is going to require a huge, huge effort on the supply chain, not just Electric Boat, but how can the supply chain deliver? And it absolutely has to be done by embedding new technologies, the latest technologies, automation, sensoring, scanning, all the manufacturing 4.0, industry 4.0 technologies need to come to bear. But CCAT, with the great work that we had done over the years, and yes, primarily aerospace focused, what I've been doing is looking at these which have been traditionally in verticals and just flipping them horizontal. Okay. And it doesn't take a genius. I'm not a rocket scientist, so I don't need a pat on the back for it. It's just saying if we've done great things in additive technology over the years, why don't we just flip it and say, let's just see how this spans across multiple industry segments.
So you think it's a fair assessment that CCAT was very aerospace focused in the past?
Yeah.
And you see it as part of your mission kind of in CCAT 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0, as you alluded to before. Part of that mission is to change the reality and the perception of where the focus is to go. And I think that's a great visual you said. Sort of, it was vertical before, maybe we were doing different stuff in 5-axis CNC and in metrics and measuring in additive and all that, but it was kind of all verticalized within maybe primarily aerospace. And you're saying, hey, we can just take all that knowledge, turn it horizontal and go, hey, we've got all this great stuff. Could we look at additive and medical device? Could we look at, machining and measuring and sub-building and so on and so forth? Not to put words in your mouth, but that's kind of what
That was a great, you just did, man. That was a perfect explanation. But and really it's technology leading the way. Yeah. And specifically when you look at the IT world, what's going on there right now. IT is
now you're about to drive right into my house.
So it's leading the way in manufacturing now. Yeah. So no longer is it somebody just coming into and start turning some dials or a press. Yep. And then the whole aspect of somebody being trained on a 5-axis machine. It's not about operating the machine anymore. It's about programming the machine. And how do you collect the data? And how do the sensors work? And how does the connectivity work?
What do you do with the data? How do you report it out? Whose hands do you put it in? Yep.
So we're kind of in a crossroads right now because we have this real shortfall, and you can use whatever number. You can say it's 10,000 or 20,000 manufacturing jobs that are open in the state of Connecticut right now. But globally, when you start looking at IT, as Industry 4.0 really takes hold globally, the pull for computer programmers and IT technology to the manufacturing base, global manufacturing base, is going to be massive. How do you fill that need now? So CCAT is simply, we're just being responsive. We're doing what any business would do. Listen to your customer, understand what they're asking, and then you can get that roadmap, build that roadmap to where you have to be going. So what we're doing now is simply taking those great things and saying, we've got great automotive companies here in the state. We've got medical device like Medtronic here in the state that are unbelievable. We've got shipbuilding. We are shipbuilding and globally here in the technology. We have Rotocraft with Sikorsky and Command. We have the best of the best, which does, give us an edge up with all the kind of things you hear in Connecticut. I travel quite a bit for business, so I love it. I don't use it as a negative at all. We have so many positive things to be talking about. And from where I sit, and I guess to a degree where government sits, if we let industry lead the way and just listen to where they're going, we can't fail. The only way we can fail is by not listening. And not
so funny, right? Because I think one of the things that I hear a lot on this podcast and just business in general, right, is that like an obsessive focus on the customer is what drives success. And we've had people on this podcast all up and down from all different, from Glenn Ford to Jason Howie, Chris Jewell, and everybody in between, the common theme I hear over and over again is focus on the customer, focus on the customer. And it's refreshing. I think, you said CCAT isn't a government entity, but sort of relatedly and sort of feels like that supporting group. It's just very refreshing to hear that focus on the customer and that focus being, industry. Because I think if we all focus on our customer, you're right, man, we can crush this thing.
Yeah. Well, you name some guys that are, simply at the top of their game. So yeah, understanding your customer and then understanding what they need. And they need top quality parts day in and day out without failure, and they need it at the lowest cost. And they need on-time delivery. Simple, right?
Quality, speed, price. Yeah, sure. We'll take them all.
CCAT, I look at us, yes, we're a 501c3, and we have a lot of other partners out there, but every entity doing business should be looking at themselves right now, understanding how they need to reinvent themselves. Understand that if even a partial part of your funding is coming from taxpayers, then you better be looking at your efficiencies, and you better be looking at how you're delivering your product. Are you listening, and are you listening to your customer? Who's your customer?
Right. Well,
just getting somebody to define who is. They might not know that. So
right.
Hard
to listen if you don't know who you're supposed to listen to.
That's been one of the interesting things and enjoyable things for me going into CCAT is just saying, look, guys, who's our customer at the end? Who are we actually trying to deliver our service for? And are we even delivering the right service to that customer yet? If not, how do we do it better? So we just have this, kind of continuous improvement thing going on now.
So just what's been your approach to go out there? You had said to me, I don't remember if it was before we started on this, but that you're kind of a bit of a listening tour, right? I mean, you're like still new, you just kind of graduating your first year CEO of CCAT this month. And so it's a new thing. What are you doing to kind of define the customer and listen to the customer?
Well, I was fortunate enough, given my background before I came into CCAT, to have had a lot of exposure to these companies, large and small. So I wasn't an unknown product, which is good for CCAT and frankly good for me, for my success. But it's simply making sure, whether it's the Connecticut Manufacturing Consortium that CBAA has put together, which is just a wonderful, again, finally you've got a collaborative group, kind of a one voice type thing. But it's really just going around to all these groups and making sure, I got to be out. I got to be attending the meetings. I've got to be, early or late, doesn't matter. We've got to be hosting all of these programs, hosting meetings, and just making sure we're asking the right question. But a lot of times just sitting, listening. If they're hosting a meeting and I've been invited to the meeting, I'm just taking notes. I don't need to be making a presentation. I don't need to even be speaking. I just need to sit back and hear what the group is saying and making sure at the end, okay, these are my 3 or 4 takeaways. This is what these guys are looking for. This is where their challenge is. And then go back to them individually, follow up, say, hey, this is what I heard you say. Elaborate a little more, and then build a plan around that. I think it's refreshing, and I think they're seeing that in CCAT now, that they've got somebody that's responsive to them, that is listening to them, and really trying to build a solution around what they're saying and their specific challenge. I'm not bringing them a solution I'm bringing something that they're telling me they need.
Right. Hearing what they want and then trying to deliver on that. What do you see as the relationship between Colin Cooper, the Chief Manufacturing Officer in Connecticut, and CCAT? Will you be engaging with Colin to try and kind of help get the word out with CCAT? Do you see, some synergies there?
Yeah. Well, Colin's the guy you got to get on the show too, because first of all, he's just a phenomenal individual,
sure is,
incredibly successful. In what he's done and what he's built. So you couldn't have picked a better, the governor couldn't have picked a better person to put in that space right now. So he is probably as important as anyone in my space right now. Certainly understanding Governor Lamont and where he's going with his strategy, and David Lehman, Peter Danios at CERC, and Colin. Those are the folks that we really have to kind of really understand, where's the focus going to be? Where do you want to put your resources? And how does CCAT position ourselves to provide the best value against their strategy? But Colin and I have a great relationship. He sees the value in CCAT, so I think he's a good champion of ours. But he also understands.
You guys know each other?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But he also, CCAT's been too aerospace focused. We've been too focused maybe on the big guys and not so much the SMEs, the small, medium-sized businesses. Maybe haven't diversified ourselves enough throughout the manufacturing industrial base. So I listen to him a lot. So he's a very valuable asset to all of us in the state right now. Has a lot to offer, and I think he's in maybe his 3rd week. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Actually, Veronica was with him last night at a manufacturing event. So, really great guy, and I think he's bringing in some very interesting. It's sort of a random kind of thing. I'm noticing a lot of people that have finance backgrounds, and maybe that's because Connecticut is a big finance state, that are kind of moving into manufacturing. Colin was in finance before he bought Whitcraft. Now I guess that's 20 years ago or whatever. You've got a finance background, so when I see the finance guys moving over to manufacturing, must be a good time to be in manufacturing.
Well, there's a lot going on in manufacturing. In the days, I think, where you had guys maybe they were at a machine shop and they were pretty proficient. So they said, I'm going to spin off and start my own machine shop. And you could do that. And I think that entrepreneur spirit is still alive. But I think in this day and age, if you don't have a good grasp on the finance and the business side of it, a business guy is probably more apt to assemble the right talent and be able to make it work. So you are seeing a lot of that. I think that will make us stronger.
Absolutely.
There's also where finance comes in is there's a very large aggregation going on, which Connecticut is really right in the sweet spot, not in a good way. Private equity has really found its way to the manufacturing supply base, and they see great value, and they're paying huge multiples for companies. Given the nature of Connecticut's supply chain, we have a very mature supply chain, and we are on some of the most sensitive military platforms, also doing things in medical device and others that is not being done anywhere else. If we simply let that happen, and then private equity finds its way to more efficient areas, we can end up be on the losing end of that. And we have to be very, very careful that we protect the companies and the IP that here. How do we help them grow? How do we help them to the point where they don't necessarily need private equity? How do we maybe be able to marry them up with capital and I'm not saying government should get into the private equity business whatsoever, but how do we make sure that we're doing the right thing?
CI's done pretty well.
CI's done pretty well, and Matt's done a phenomenal job at the helm there. So, but
does CCAT have a role in that? Because I think that is an interesting, not something I would plan that we were going to talk about, but you do have some finance background. But we do of course see that, right? I think it's not just manufacturing, but certainly the days of family generational businesses and just passing it down or selling it to the next generation isn't sort of the default necessarily anymore. And to your point, right, there is a lot more kind of roll-ups in private equity going. Does CCAT have a role in helping companies stay, kind of independent?
I think I don't want to be so bold to say we're the most important, but I think we're one of the best retention and recruitment tools that the state of Connecticut has. And I hope they lean on us for that, because we get companies from all over the world coming in all the time. CCAT is a selling point to know that there's a partner here in the state of Connecticut that they can help do development work or prototyping or new product introduction is very, very strong. And it doesn't happen everywhere. So whether it's, again, helping companies in state remain competitive, get that access to the workforce or get their existing workforce trained up is incredibly valuable.
So workforce, listen, it's everywhere I go. It's a huge topic of conversation. You alluded to the, whatever it is, 10 to 20,000 job openings. I think I was here last night. They were saying that somewhere between 25 and 30% of the existing 170,000 manufacturing jobs are going to retire, in the next 10 years, or they're 55 or older, so likely to retire in the next 10 years, right? So in addition to the job growth openings, you've got replacement jobs and all that. So it's a big topic and a very, very important one. What is CCAT's role in workforce development?
We're doing a couple things, and we split workforce up from education. So sometimes it gets a little bit muddled, where they say, well, we have a workforce development program, and we're in high schools, junior high schools. So we take that kind of STEM awareness and STEM education side, and we have that cornered off.
Saying that that's not saying that that's unimportant, but saying it's really not. It's a little disingenuous, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word to say it, but to say that going to visit with middle school students is workforce development. Maybe it is, but those people probably aren't going to be in the workforce for 5 or 6 years.
Right. It's incredibly important, and we have to do as much as we can, even down to grade 3 now.
Absolutely.
Nothing
it's a big
more
mission at the Connecticut Science Center, right?
That's right.
Matt's, drive that STEM education. Matt's doing a big job over there.
Yeah, and he's got a great new initiative going there. And there's a lot of resources going to that. So that cannot be understated, the importance of that in the future. But what we're looking at right now is saying, okay, what's right in front of our nose? What are we trying to solve for in 2020?
How can we get 10,000 people that want to work in there now, not in 5 years?
EB needs thousands of employees in the coming 5 years. Look at the turnover that we're seeing at Pratt, where they have all these retirees. Well, they're making room in their workforce for the new type of employee maybe that they're looking at. So workforce can't be understated. CCAT is a player in that, and there's a lot of partners in that. And the most important thing is that the partners, the workforce investment boards, for instance, that are out there, everyone is doing really, really good work. But we're all kind of doing work in pockets. And I think the the most important thing that could happen in the coming year is, and Colin Cooper is looking at it, is how do all these resources align? And is everybody really playing off the same playbook? Are we really going after the same thing? Is our strategy aligned? Or are we all just doing things really in pockets? And, you'll have some successes, but it will be limited, and we won't really move the needle at the end.
If we want the sum of the parts the whole to be greater than the sum of the parts, we got to be rowing in the same direction.
You've got to. Right.
Yeah. No, listen, I mean, there's been some really good stuff on that, right? I mean, I've been involved with EMA, and I mentioned Chris Jewell, and EWIB, the Eastern Workforce Investment Board, has been doing great stuff. And what was so encouraging, is that to find out that EWIB and Capital Workforce, which is kind of the Southern Workforce Board, are working together, right? And we're trying to learn and share those lessons. And you see CCAT as having a role in helping to do that?
Right. Well, so we're a provider for Capital Workforce Partners. We're a provider for Workforce Solutions. We do work for the United Way. We do some funding and work from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving and CHIFA. But it's niche work. So we want to do things, again, very specialized. So everything that CCAT is working on is demand driven. That's our number one thing. I am committed not to spend $1 unless the industry is telling us to do that. So when I talk about CCAT, I'm not talking about throughput of a lot of people. I'm talking about something where we're looking at a very interesting population of the state of Connecticut, ones that, again, are underserved, under-recognized in many ways. How do we now engage these people into our workforce? Because they haven't been. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what we have to do is look back and say...
I mean, we're talking about like formerly incarcerated
could be incarcerated, could be in distressed communities. Mm-hmm. And we have now built an assessment tool. We can go in, understand these people, pull these populations of people out, go put them through assessment, and then some training, and getting them placed in careers, not just jobs.
Sure.
So we can do decent numbers, but CCAT isn't the whole solution. We want to be able to take what we do and be able to scale it up through partners around the state. But I am a firm believer that our workforce numbers won't improve without looking at populations that we typically have not gone after in a very, very novel way, let's just say.
Have you guys had success doing that?
We have. We've had a lot of success absolutely doing it.
Do you want to quote some numbers or tell me what you've done?
Well, I don't think, again, I have to be careful with the numbers because I don't have them all.
Sure,
I have to be careful when I quote a number that it's perfect, it's really accurate, but we've had some very good successes with the large companies. And I know we have success because they're coming back for more. They've asked us to do it again. So to me, that's the most important thing, that we're doing it right. And the retention of the employees. So it's not just the ones that you end up placing, but are they there 6 months later? That's very, very crucial, is to look at, are you doing the right thing, or are they actually not cutting it at the end? So do we need to look at different types of services up front? I'm concerned about a couple things in just more of a holistic way, saying, okay, if we've got all of these job openings, I really hope that what we've been doing over the past 2 decades, we're looking at a little bit differently. Because if we're all sitting here saying, hey, we got it all figured out, then how do we have so many jobs going unfilled? And how is the manufacturing base in particular, or the technology base in particular, telling us we're not meeting the needs of the workforce? And it could be in your world even. I imagine you have a big strain on IT. Oh, yeah. Everybody's fighting for the top talent. Well, if we're fighting, then that's a bit of a concern, to be looking back at what we've been doing and say, maybe we've got to
listen, in IT, similar to manufacturing, what I see in manufacturing is, I don't know if I would call it fighting so much as there's so much good work needed, and we all need so many great people. Like, we're not so much fighting as sort of partnering and saying, listen, what can we do to get more people into the job career? Because like that, none of us are going to be successful. And I think we've all learned, if we just keep poaching from each other's pool, that's not really, helping anybody either. So talk a little bit about incumbent worker training, because I think that's another thing that I'm hearing from folks, which is, if I'm able to bring in some folks through, say, like even the workforce development program that you referenced from distressed communities, but even not, right? Even I hear stories about people that graduated from, college, with a political science degree and nowhere to go. They're looking at manufacturing. Some people from finance looking to get into manufacturing. But even in those scenarios, a lot of those people are starting off in the entry level. Mm-hmm. And the people that are retiring aren't entry level people, right? These are 20, 30, 40 year experienced folks. And so I think an area that could be super helpful is, if I've got somebody that's got 10 years, giving them some training to boost their experience faster helps me hire more entry level people, right, to grow, instead of trying to find those experienced tool makers. So I don't know if you agree with that kind of concept, but how does CCAT do that with incumbent worker training?
We're equally concerned and probably even more so focused on incumbent worker training. That when you look at CCAT as being an advanced,
you think that's your better area?
Absolutely. I mean, because it's real time now. I mean, you literally can put someone through a training program. They can go back to that shop floor or back to their desk and immediately be a better employee. That's impactful. That's making, and we have to make a difference with every dollar that every bit of our resource. So yes, the workforce, again, because of technology is leading the way here, is requiring upskilling in incumbent worker training, whether it's the programmers that now need to become more proficient in the latest programming technologies. And these are things that are actually on the technology.
So do you have general kind of skill up programs? Is it specific to like, hey, come learn how to use this specific 5-axis CNC? Like, what kind of incumbent worker training does CCAT offer?
So part of, again, my mission and my vision for CCAT is that we're doing this more in partnership, because you can't have all the resources in-house, and you don't want to, because it's too difficult to stay fresh. It's easier if you say, look, we need to provide advanced NX training to the programmers on the shop floor. Well, it's much easier for me to go right to Siemens. Siemens comes into CCAT, puts on a week-long program, and we provide the training in conjunction with Siemens or with Forcam. Now, we're doing the same model, really, with the technologies that are on the shop floor.
Got it.
My vision is, say, look, if we go out and buy $1 million or $1.5 million piece of additive equipment, it's very likely that equipment is going to become outdated.
Right.
Isn't it better for us to establish a relationship with the manufacturer of the equipment, get them to consign the equipment, we'll demonstrate it, do projects on it. When the technology changes, we swap it out.
Swap it out. Right.
Now we're acting as a real test bed, a real demonstration bed, a teaching, training, sales tool for the manufacturers that are making the equipment.
Yep.
So it involves collaborations, involves just a smarter model that we're trying to build. It's a better use of our resources. So now we can take resources, and instead of expending it on CapEx, which again, technology is changing, I can now put it into programming.
Yep.
And as long as I have those partnerships, we've got a real good model that we can use going forward. So
the CCAT training primarily focused on how to use actual machines and work with actual materials?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, do you
guys have any sort of supervisory management training, or it's really more shop floor using the technology?
Yeah, I wouldn't say because that kind of gets into the business side of it. If that's you're better going to kind of UConn business school, University of Harvard. What we're trying to do is the guys that are really more the hands-on shop floor type of guys. Now you'll have maybe an operational manager there as well. But it's the guys that are really going to go back and say, hey, I can now program better.
I can do this.
Tomorrow, I can come in and I can program this thing in 20 hours where it used to take me 30 hours, or a much more efficient tool path, which is now going to just shave off 10% of the time it just took to manufacture.
And are these tool. so I'm a manufacturer, I want to send someone over to CCAT. Are there like specific programs that I'm going to sign them up for? How do I find out about those?
Yeah, so we have lists of programs on our website, but we also shop those out. So we'll go to the aerospace components folks, the medical device folks, the Connecticut Manufacturing Collaborative, and we'll broadcast these. So they'll announce the programs that we have coming up.
Gotcha.
And people sign up for them, and they decide which ones they want. And we'll be very specific of what the training is. And we have the conference room where we do some training, and then we take them right out on the shop floor. Sometimes it's all done on the shop floor. It all depends on what program we're putting on.
That's like pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, incumbent worker training, the future given of the type of worker that we're getting the feedback from manufacturers that they need workers that are dual role. Probably no different in Europe, that you can't be hiring somebody for one specific purpose anymore, but they're looking for critical thinkers.
Yeah.
They need people who are going to be able to kind of reinvent themselves every 10 years.
The most important skill, period, bar none. I don't care what you do. Your ability to think critically, it's unbelievably crucial. Yeah.
I mean, an engineer, we're hearing that a freshman engineer, by the time they graduate from a 4 or 5 year program, is going to be doing things differently than what they're being taught right now. And a 21-year-old coming out of college, they better know what they're thinking, that they think they might be doing when they're 31, 41, 51, and 61, because their industry, bar none, whatever you're in, is changing, and technology is doing all that. So they've got to be able to learn more. They've got to be able to get skilled up. If you're coming out and you're kind of stuck in a path, that will make for a more challenging workforce. We need a nimble, efficient workforce, but one that is absolutely able to critically think and be skilled up.
me ask you a personal question. What do you love?
Is there a seatbelt
What
on
do
this
you
chair?
what do you love the most about your role at CCAT?
Oh boy, that's really hard. I'm like a kid when I go over to the manufacturing center. I certainly love seeing the projects, seeing the machines running, because I am not an engineer. So I only know so much, and my guys give me little tidbits, and they, after 5 minutes, I'm like, all right, you lost me. And they're so smart and experienced in what they do. But I think what I love most is hearing back. I think for any of us, it's the satisfaction of knowing that you've heard back from a customer that said, you did a great job. Thank you. You made a difference to me. So I couldn't dismiss that. That's probably the thing that makes the biggest difference to me. But, from my own personal standpoint, walking in and seeing machines going and looking at a part running, I'm like a kid looking at it. I can stare at the thing for, just minutes go by, and I'm just watching this spindle going, or this laser putting down material to build an additive part. It blows me away.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
Yeah.
What's how many people are at CCAT? What's like kind of the staff makeup over there? And
Well, we have so when you talk, I'll stick to just kind of the CCAT mission. So we have, probably around 25 to 30 that we've got. Remember, we deal with partners and contractors.
Sure, yeah.
So it's a bit less than when we were, a year ago. So we've become a little bit more focused. And from my standpoint, it's saying, what are we good at? What do we need to be really good at and focused on? And then where do we need to collaborate? So if we need to be better somewhere, and somebody's doing it really good, I just need to build that bridge. Do we need to
build it ourselves, or just connect to it?
Just build the bridge.
Yep.
Build the bridge with them and collaborate. And then you can actually, the good thing about that is when it comes to government funding a project, now you've got dual resources going after projects. It just makes for a better model. So that's one that I really like. So it's really just kind of understanding, what are our staffing levels? Where do we need to be? That we do have to hire some people. We're interviewing some people and some key skill sets that we need to be going after, particularly in the technology areas. For the delivery.
Like technology?
Well, additive. Hybrid machining, very, very, very unique. It's hard because when you're doing development work, it's not like you're a job shop and you say, hey, look, we've got more work coming in. We need to hire based on the work coming in. We're doing development work. So it's kind of like you need a backup. If you're doing a sensitive project for NASA and it's time sensitive, and you've got someone who says, hey, look, I can only put in so much time, or maybe they get sick.
Right.
So we have to we have to do the same type of cross training and the same type of thing where we need to make sure, do we have the right bench?
Yep.
Just to make sure we're, all the technologies we're able to train up and utilize, and we don't have downtime if we've got customers in.
So you've talked a lot, or mentioned a few times, sort of the last 15 years and the next 10 years. Are you kind of operating in your mind on like a 10-year horizon for some goals you'd like to see CCAT achieve over the next decade?
Yeah, I mean, the next 10 years clearly is going to be around the fourth industrial revolution and IoT. So it's going to be around the connectivity, the internet of things, and so my goal is to move CCAT and make sure that we're the real example of that shop floor, digital shop floor. I mean, that's what we have to be. So we have to not only be proficient in demonstrating the advanced technologies, but we also have to be doing them in a way that shows a company this is how it also interacts with your digital shop floor. That's a whole nother challenge. So you're not just talking now about a company saying, hey, look, I have to add additive technology into my shop. I have to become proficient in this technology. It's also, how are you going to connect the machine? How are you going to get the data? What are going to be the sensors around the machine? And also looking at, we have to start understanding automation is here.
Oh, yeah.
Virtual reality is
Robots,
here. Augmented
cobots,
reality is here. Right. Generative design, model-based definition, which is being pushed down from the government. You can't say no to these things. You can only say no so long. So if you're a supply chain company,
if you say no for long enough, someone else will say yes.
Somebody else says yes.
And you're the buggy whip manufacturer.
And that's what, when I look at Connecticut, we've trained and educated the world. Here, Connecticut. And are we proud of that? Well, we could be proud of that, but we should also be a bit disappointed in that. Other states, we talk about other regions of the country that are doing well. They're doing well on our back. They're doing well because decades ago, we allowed technology to be moved somewhere else. It wasn't like, well, all the jobs are going down south. Well, the jobs didn't go down south first. They went down south because the technology was there, and the technology brought businesses, and then the businesses brought the people. So that's why I'm more technology focused, and whether it is education, curriculum, all the way in the elementary schools, whether it's incumbent worker training, workforce, or whether it's adoption of technology. It all leads with technology first. Where do we need to be 5 and 10 years from now? If you don't understand the technologies, you have no idea what you're training for, and certainly no idea what you're educating for. So I think it's important for government and industry to be very much aligned. Like we have a new Commission of Education here in the state, very progressive. I'm hearing good things. I hope they're convening the manufacturing groups or frankly the whole business community and understanding, hey, we need to start looking at our K through 12 curriculum. Where do you guys need us to be? What do we want to do? So I think there has to be a much more holistic approach
and kind of connect all that.
Yeah.
What is what in your mind's eye, what does CCAT look like 5 years from now?
We are larger, but we're more focused. I mean, I think we're going to be very focused around our 4 key technology verticals that we turn horizontal though through the industries, and on the incumbent worker training. I think those are going to be some of the very, very, very big areas.
So driving technologies across manufacturing industry in Connecticut and really driving that incumbent worker training. That's your goal. You look at that as success.
Our technical resources will grow. Our technical capabilities will grow, but our footprint will greatly expand through our collaborations. So we are national, we are international in many ways. We have to broaden those. We have to look at what are the other very, very important capabilities that we need to be looking at, and who do we need to link up who has those capabilities? Because you can't be something to everybody.
So are you guys working with kind of Stanley and the manufacturing in Hartford?
Oh yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
We're working on a very good success. As a matter of fact, when you look at the private sector taking the lead on InsurTech or TechStars, it's important for entities like CCAT to play a role in that, because as the private sector funds those initiatives, which is the best thing you could possibly have for Connecticut, private sector takes the lead. But when they need to graduate out of those accelerators, where do they go? For those that are involved in the manufacturing technologies, CCAT's a great place for them to go. We have office space, but we also have space where if you have a technology, we can put it at our center. We can demonstrate it for you.
Sure.
We can bring people in and train you.
Nice kind of like secondary step after you kind of get out of, when you get out of launch mode and you want to get into sort of accelerated mode. That's where that's at.
We bring there's companies coming into CCAT every day. So you can now showcase your technology. We can help with business development. Engineering staff can now help them. So we want to be that kind of, look, we're all trying to build the right ecosystem here. So in the right continuum, that's the way I try to put it. And, CCAT's role is just to be a vital part of that continuum, not to be the continuum and not to be in every bit of the continuum. Need to be narrowly focused on the highest value adds that we could be doing to the manufacturing base and in the industrial base, and stick to that, and just make sure that we're making sure our part of the connection is rock solid, and we're doing exactly what industry is trying to tell us to do.
We all build from that. Well, that's a really great place to leave it. Before I get to kind of our rapid fire round of questions, which is definitely kind of coming your way. We asked a question which I was just trying to figure out if there's a way for it to kind of to apply here, but I'm going to ask it because we've talked a lot about customer approach. We often ask the guests, do you have a white whale customer? Like, is there a customer or somebody you'd love to get in front of, somebody that you've been trying to get to notice or engage with CCAT that really isn't engaging, that might be able to hear for this podcast and pick up the phone and give you a buzz? Is there anybody that falls into that category?
So if I can just do two segments. In-state electric boat. Electric boat would be the one that we'd love to have because where shipbuilding is going and the need to bolster their supply chain is crucial. Same thing with wind. Being in the wind industry and doing all that, taking that vertical from turbine work that we've done for 15 years and turning that and saying, let's just spread wind is turbines.
Right, yep.
And composite materials. On international stage, Airbus, Rolls-Royce, those would be the two biggies international, the white whales that we'd be looking at.
That's good stuff.
I would rather look at home first, and say, how do we make a big difference here? But
if you generate a relationship with Airbus and Rolls-Royce, right, that can only help the supply chain here develop those relationships. And I think ultimately kind of meeting our mission of how can we make the companies here more competitive and better off.
Exactly.
That's really good stuff, Ron. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for all that. We're going to go to a rapid fire round of questions. You ready? Yep. All right. Hot takes: Red Sox or Yankees?
Oh, Red Sox.
There we go. Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Starbucks.
All right. Staycation or exotic destination when you take time off?
Oh, you kidding me? I got to go with the exotic.
All right. Yeah. iPhone or Android?
Oh, Android.
Oh, there we go.
Not an iPhone fan.
Sports car or SUV?
Both.
Both. All right. Well, hey, we've had other people say they want to have both. There you go. If you could do anything other than running CCAT, what would you do?
I'd be working probably at a children's hospital on technology. How do I advance technologies in the healthcare field? And children just have a soft spot for me. So that's what I'd be doing.
That's good. Yeah. You have a favorite business book?
I don't have I have too many.
Too many of them.
It depends what crisis I'm looking into at the time.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What's one thing that you learned early in your career, or maybe early in your life, that's propelled you to the successes that you've had?
Yeah, keep your mouth shut and listen. Customer focused. Just listen.
What's something that you've learned later in your life that you wish you go back and tell young Ron that you think really help him develop and grow?
Don't ever be satisfied where you are. You've never had there's no such thing as success. So it's just a point in time.
All right. Keep on pressing.
Moving. Keep on improving.
That's really, really good stuff, Ron. After everything we've talked about a lot. If you want to get in touch with you, learn more about CCAT, or just kind of engage with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Probably the website, because it has all the contact information. I would give out my cell phone, which I love to give to people. I'm not doing it on this podcast.
What's the website address?
www.ccat.us.
CCAT.us. That'll be also in the podcast notes. Yeah. And maybe I'll convince Ron to let me put his cell phone in our podcast notes. So we'll see.
There's ways of getting it.
And we'll see that. So just want to wrap it up with our closing question, which is, given everything that we've talked about today, and as I mentioned, it's been a lot. If someone was listening today and you think, hey, there's this one thing that if you did forget everything else, but you remembered this one thing that would really drive value to the audience, what do you think is that one thing?
Your audience primarily Connecticut? Is that what we're talking about?
100%.
Okay. You are in the best place you could possibly do business. You're a winner. Everyone who's listening here is a winner. I love talking about this when I'm abroad or anywhere else. You can be in different parts of the U.S. or different parts of the world, and you can cut corners. You maybe don't have to be as efficient. When you're in Connecticut, the best of the best are here. And that's why I love touting Connecticut when I'm overseas at an air show or something. We are the best in what we do. We have to. We know we have higher labor costs here. We know we have higher energy costs. We know we have challenges that other businesses don't face. And if you're succeeding here, you can do it anywhere. So that we have the best of the best, and you're all in the company of the best companies, regardless of what industry you're in. So I hope everyone who's listening, don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to everything you're seeing in print. Just know you're in the best possible place. There are resources. There are partners out there. We're all in this together. We're all going to be a part of the greater success.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I'm not even sure that I should go follow that up, but I will. I think there's a number of different things that we talked about today, but the one I think that's so crucially important, and it's come before, and it can never be overstated, is know your customer and focus on your customer needs. It's impossible to end up in the wrong place if you just do those two simple things: know your customer and listen to what their real needs are. That'll win the day every single time. So, Ron, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It was really interesting, and I really appreciate it.
Pleasure, Ari. Thank you for having me on.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by IT Direct.
As always, thanks so much for tuning in. I definitely want your feedback and hope you subscribe. But what I want the most is to build a community where we learn and grow with each other. I hope you're getting a lot of value out of the time we're spending together. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next time.